Have you ever been forced into something you didn't want, only to realize too late that it was all a trap? Imagine getting married to a man your mother introduced to you, only to discover on your wedding night that she had been hiding a dark secret all along. What would you do if the very person who raised you was the one who betrayed you the most? This is the heartbreaking story of Emelda, a woman who thought she had found love, only to uncover the most unimaginable truth on the night of her wedding. Watch till the end, and don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you do in her situation? Emelda never wanted to marry Richie. She had met him through her mother, and from the very beginning, something felt off. Her mother, a woman she had always trusted, had pressured her into accepting him. "He's rich, well-connected, and he likes you," her mother had said. But Emelda wasn't interested. She wanted love, not wealth. Her mother didn't take no for an answer. She continued to persuade, manipulate, and even guilt-trip her daughter until, finally, Emelda agreed to meet Richie. When she saw him, she had to admit, he was charming, handsome, and well-spoken. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. After all, she was already 27, and society was beginning to whisper. Their relationship moved quickly. Within months, wedding plans were in full swing. Richie was everything a woman could want: kind, generous, and successful. But deep down, Emelda couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The night before the wedding, she went looking for Richie. He had disappeared, and no one seemed to know where he was. Then, his best man, a man she once loved before her mother ended their relationship, suggested something strange. "Check your mom's room." At first, she laughed at the absurdity of it. But something in the best man's voice made her take the suggestion seriously. With an open mind, she walked to her mother's room, expecting to find them discussing last-minute wedding details. Instead, she found Richie massaging her mother's neck. It wasn't a big deal. Her mother often complained of neck pain. But something about the way Richie jumped when he saw her, something about the way her mother quickly spoke up to explain, "He was just helping me, my dear. Don't be upset," sent a shiver down Emelda's spine. She brushed it off. Tomorrow was her big day. The wedding was beautiful. The church ceremony, the reception, the laughter, the music, it all felt like a dream. But Emelda and Richie had their own secret plan. Instead of staying for the entire reception, they had booked a private hotel suite where they would spend their first night together as husband and wife. They didn't tell anyone, except the best man and best lady, before sneaking away. When they arrived at the hotel, they were exhausted. They hadn't eaten all day, so they decided to order food before taking a shower. But as they waited, Richie grew impatient. "I'll go get the food myself," he said. Emelda nodded. But as the minutes turned to hours, her stomach twisted in anxiety. By 11 p.m., Richie still hadn't returned. She called the receptionist. "Ma'am, your husband hasn't been here. He didn't place any food order." Her heart pounded. Where was he? She called his phone. No answer. She called the best man. He hesitated before speaking. "Check the next room." Emelda froze. How did his best man know anything about the next room? No one else knew about this hotel, except for her mother. With shaking hands, she stepped into the hallway. She stood outside the next room, pressing her ear against the door. Then she heard it. Her mother's voice. Moaning. Whispering. Then Richie's voice. Emelda's body went numb. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. Minutes passed. Finally, the door opened. Richie stepped out, his shirt half-buttoned, his face dripping with sweat. When he saw Emelda standing there, he turned pale. Before he could react, she pushed him hard, shoving him back into the room. And there, lying on the bed, was her mother. Naked, drained, unbothered. Emelda's scream was filled with agony. "Emma, why?" Her mother sat up, completely unfazed. "I did nothing to you, Emelda. She stretched lazily, as if she had just woken up from a satisfying nap. "Richie has always been mine. I only allowed him to marry you so I wouldn't lose him." Emelda's body trembled as tears poured down her face. "But why, Mom? You couldn't even let me have my wedding night? Wasn't taking him from me enough?" Her mother only smirked. No remorse. No shame. Just cold, cruel selfishness. Emelda stood frozen, her mother's words slicing through her like a blade. "Richie has always been mine." She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The man she had just married, the man she was supposed to start a new life with, had been in a secret relationship with her own mother all along. And now, on the night of her wedding, she had walked in on them. Tears blurred her vision as she turned to Richie, hoping, begging, for an explanation. But his expression was empty. He didn't look guilty, he didn't look sorry. He just stood there, silent, as if he had nothing to say. "Richie, how could you?" Emelda's voice cracked, her chest tightening with pain. Richie sighed, rubbing his face. "Emelda, I didn't want to hurt you." Her mother scoffed. "Oh, stop pretending, Richie." She needed to know eventually. Emelda clenched her fists. "Mom, you're my mother. How could you do this to me?" Her mother rolled her eyes. "You act like I betrayed you, but the truth is, you were never supposed to have him. I only let you marry him so I wouldn't lose him. He belongs to me, not you." Emelda's world spun. She staggered backward, gripping the doorframe to keep herself from collapsing. So this whole time, the wedding, the plans, everything, it was all a lie? "Not a lie," her mother corrected. "Just necessary." Emelda turned to Richie again. "And you? You played along." Richie finally met her gaze. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I cared about you, Emelda, in my own way. But your mother and I, we have history. She helped me when no one else did. I couldn't just leave her." Emelda let out a shaky breath. "So that's why you agreed to marry me? To keep my mother happy?" Richie nodded slowly. "I wanted to give you a good life too. I figured, maybe over time, you'd be okay with things as they are." "As they are?" Emelda repeated, her voice rising in disbelief. "You thought I would just accept this?" Her mother shrugged. "It's not the worst thing that could happen to you. You're still married to a wealthy man, aren't you? You can still have a good life. Just understand that he belongs to both of us." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped Emelda's lips. "You're unbelievable." She turned and stormed out of the room, her hands shaking. She didn't know where she was going, but she needed to get away. Away from Richie. Away from her mother. Away from the suffocating betrayal that threatened to consume her. She rushed back to her hotel suite and locked the door behind her. Her chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. She couldn't stay here. She had to leave. But where would she go? Her mind raced with possibilities. She could go back to the wedding venue, but what would she say? That her husband had disappeared into the next room to sleep with her mother? Who would believe her? Then her phone buzzed. It was the best man. Emelda hesitated, then answered. "Is he back?" the best man asked. Tears welled in Emelda's eyes. She swallowed hard. Not just back. He was never mine to begin with. There was silence on the other end. Then, in a calm but firm voice, the best man asked, "Where are you?" "The hotel room." "Pack your things and leave." "No." Emelda blinked. "What?" "Just trust me. Get out of there before they manipulate you into staying. I'll come get you." A lump formed in her throat. She had never felt so betrayed, so broken. But the best man's words struck a chord. She had to leave. Wiping her tears, Emelda grabbed her suitcase. Her wedding gown was still on the bed, a painful reminder of what was supposed to be the happiest night of her life. She changed into something simple, packed her essentials, and opened the door. As she stepped out into the hallway, she looked back one last time. The dream was over. Now, it was time to decide what came next. Emelda stepped into the cold night air, her heart pounding in her chest. She clutched her suitcase tightly, barely able to process what had just happened. Her wedding night, her fresh start, had been nothing but a carefully crafted illusion. Her mother and Richie had betrayed her in the worst way possible. And now, she was walking away from it all. A sleek black car pulled up in front of the hotel. The tinted window rolled down, revealing the best man, Daniel. The man she once loved. The man she was forced to leave behind. "Get in," he said, his voice calm but firm. Emelda hesitated for a moment. The last thing she wanted was to trade one mistake for another. But she had no other options. She climbed into the passenger seat, closing the door behind her. As the car pulled away, Daniel glanced at her. "Where do you want to go?" Emelda swallowed hard. "Anywhere but here." Daniel nodded and drove in silence. For a while, neither of them spoke. Emelda stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. Her mind replayed everything: her mother's cold confession, Richie's empty expression, the betrayal that had shattered her entire world. Then Daniel broke the silence. "I told you something felt off about him." Emelda sighed. "I know. And I told you your mother was too involved in this marriage." "I know, Daniel," she snapped, then immediately regretted it. She turned to him, her voice softer. "I'm sorry. I don't know how to feel right now." Daniel nodded. "It's okay. You just found out your mother was sleeping with your husband on your wedding night. You're allowed to feel however you want." Emelda closed her eyes. "God, when you say it like that, it sounds even worse." "Because it is." She exhaled shakily. "I should have listened to my instincts. But I let my mother control me. And now, I've lost everything." Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You haven't lost everything, Emelda. You just lost what wasn't meant for you." They drove in silence again. Finally, Daniel pulled up in front of a quiet apartment complex. "You can stay here for now. It's one of my properties. No one knows about it." Emelda hesitated. "Daniel, why are you helping me?" He turned off the engine and looked at her. "Because despite everything, I still care about you." Emelda felt a lump form in her throat. She wanted to say something, but she couldn't find the words. Instead, she nodded and stepped out of the car. As she entered the apartment, she realized something. For the first time in a long time, she was free. Broken. Betrayed. But free. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, Richie sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his temples. "You should have handled that better," he muttered. Emelda's mother, Rose, sighed dramatically. "Oh, please, it was bound to happen. I'm just glad it's finally out in the open." Richie shook his head. "She's not going to stay quiet about this, Rose. You know that, right?" Rose smirked. "Let her talk. Who's going to believe her? A newlywed wife running around, screaming that her mother stole her husband? People will think she's lost her mind." Richie exhaled. "And what if she does something drastic?" Rose stood up, slipping on her silk robe. "Then we handle it." Richie frowned. "What do you mean by that?" Rose walked over and placed a hand on his cheek. "Don't worry, my love. I always have a plan." The dim light in Daniel's apartment cast long shadows across the room as Emelda sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. The weight of betrayal sat heavy on her chest, pressing down like a boulder. She had just walked away from a life she had been forced into, a marriage built on deception. Daniel placed a cup of tea in front of her and sat beside her. "You should get some rest," he said gently. Emelda let out a dry laugh. Rest. How do I rest when my entire life just fell apart in one night? Daniel sighed. I get it. But running yourself into exhaustion won't change what happened. She took a deep breath and sipped the tea, but it did little to calm her racing thoughts. She looked up at Daniel. Do you think she's right? That no one will believe me. Daniel's jaw tightened. Rose knows how to manipulate people. She's powerful, connected. But that doesn't mean you're powerless. Emelda bit her lip. I don't even know what I want to do. Expose them, get revenge, or just disappear and start over. Daniel studied her for a moment. What do you want, Emelda? Forget your mother. Forget Richie. What do you want for yourself? Emelda fell silent. For so long, she had lived under her mother's shadow, making decisions to please her. Now she was free, but freedom felt terrifying. I don't know, she admitted. But I do know one thing. She met Daniel's gaze. I won't let them get away with this. Meanwhile, Rose poured herself a glass of wine, lounging in the hotel suite as Richie paced back and forth. She's going to talk, Rose, Richie muttered. She'll tell everyone. Rose smirked. Let her. No one will believe her. And even if they do, I can fix it. Richie stopped pacing and looked at her. How? Emelda isn't weak. She might expose everything. Rose sipped her wine, unbothered. That's why we have to make sure she doesn't get the chance. Richie narrowed his eyes. What are you saying? Rose set down her glass and leaned in. She's emotional right now, vulnerable. We just have to control the narrative before she does. How? Rose smiled. Simple. We paint her as the unstable one, the jealous, bitter wife who ran away on her wedding night. We spread the story that she had second thoughts about the marriage and left you humiliated at the hotel. We turn her into the villain. Richie hesitated. And if she fights back? Rose's eyes darkened. Then we silence her. Richie stiffened. You don't mean... Relax, Richie. I'm not talking about anything extreme. Rose laughed lightly. I just mean we make sure she has nowhere to run, no one to believe her. We control everything, her reputation, her resources. By the time we're done, she'll be the one begging us for mercy. Richie exhaled, running a hand through his hair. And if Daniel gets involved? Rose's playful smirk vanished. Then we remind him why he lost her in the first place. Back at Daniel's apartment, Emelda's phone buzzed on the table. She hesitated before picking it up. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello. A low, mocking laugh came through the line. Oh, my dear Emelda, running away so soon. Emelda's stomach twisted. Mom, you should have stayed, sweetheart. Now you've made things messy. Emelda gripped the phone tighter. I know what you're trying to do. But I won't let you manipulate me anymore. Rose chuckled. Oh, Emelda, do you really think people will believe your little sob story? You ran out on your husband on your wedding night. Right now, the story spreading like wildfire is that you got cold feet and abandoned Richie. People are already talking. Emelda's breath caught. You wouldn't. I already did. Tears of frustration burned in Emelda's eyes. And Daniel, Rose continued. You really think he can save you? He's just a man I discarded years ago. Do you really think he stands a chance against me? Emelda's fingers trembled. You won't win this, Mom. Oh, darling, Rose purred. I already have. The line went dead. Emelda clenched her fists. She's spreading lies about me. She's turning everyone against me. Daniel took the phone from her and checked the trending social media posts. The headlines made Emelda's blood run cold. Bride runs away on wedding night. Did she marry for money? Wealthy businessman humiliated by bride's cold feet. Sources say bride had a secret lover. Is this why she fled? Tears rolled down Emelda's cheeks. She's ruining my name. Daniel's expression hardened. Then we fight back. Emelda looked up at him. How? Daniel's jaw tightened. By exposing the truth before it's too late. The walls of Daniel's apartment felt like they were closing in as Emelda scrolled through the social media posts spreading like wildfire. Every comment, every headline painted her as the villain, the runaway bride, the gold digger, the woman who abandoned her husband on their wedding night. Her hands trembled as she turned to Daniel. If I don't stop this now, my reputation will be destroyed. Daniel leaned forward, his expression serious. Then we need to get ahead of the story. We need proof. Emelda let out a bitter laugh. Proof? You think my mother and Richie would be stupid enough to leave any evidence? Daniel gave her a knowing look. Everyone leaves a trail, Emelda. You just have to know where to look. Emelda wiped her tears, determination flickering in her eyes. Then let's find it. Meanwhile, at Rose's mansion, Rose sat on her plush leather couch, swirling a glass of wine in her hand as she watched the online chaos unfold. Richie sat across from her, his face tense. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Richie muttered. Rose smirked. Why wouldn't I? She thought she could run, but now she has nowhere to go. Soon, she'll come crawling back, and when she does, she'll play by my rules. Richie ran a hand through his hair. I don't think she's going to give up that easily. She might try to fight back. Rose's smirk faded slightly. She took a slow sip of her wine. Then we make sure she doesn't get the chance. Richie frowned. What do you mean? Rose placed her glass down and met his gaze. If she tries to expose us, we plant something worse on her. We dig into her past, find something we can use to destroy her credibility. If she doesn't have a scandal, we create one. Richie hesitated. Are you sure about this? Rose leaned closer, her voice dangerously low. Are you having second thoughts, Richie? Richie swallowed hard. No. I didn't think things would go this far. Rose chuckled. Oh, darling, we're just getting started. Back at Daniel's apartment, Emelda paced the room, her mind racing. There has to be something, she muttered. Some kind of proof that they were together before the wedding. Daniel tapped his fingers on the table. What about messages? Photos? Anything suspicious you've noticed before? Emelda thought back. Then it hit her. The night before the wedding, she gasped. When I found Richie in my mom's hotel room massaging her neck. Daniel raised an eyebrows. You mean the moment you brushed off as nothing? Emelda groaned. I was so blind. But maybe the hotel cameras caught something. Daniel's eyes lit up. Now that's something we can use. If we can get that footage, we can prove they were together before your wedding even happened. Emelda grabbed her phone. I'll call the hotel and ask if they have security footage. Daniel shook his head. No. If your mother has influence, she could have people working there. We can't tip them off. We need to go there ourselves and get that footage before they erase it. Emelda nodded. Then let's go. At the hotel security office, the hotel's night manager looked at Daniel and Emelda skeptically. I'm sorry, but we can't release security footage without proper authorization. Emelda's heart sank. Please, it's important. There was an incident the night before my wedding. I just need to check something. The manager sighed. Even if I wanted to help, the footage from that night has already been deleted. Daniel narrowed his eyes. Deleted? Why? The manager hesitated before leaning in slightly. Look, I'm not supposed to say this, but someone paid to have the footage erased this morning. Emelda's blood ran cold. Who? The manager hesitated. All I can say is, she was a woman. Powerful. And she didn't want any trace left behind. Emelda clenched her fists. It was my mother. Daniel turned to her. She's covering her tracks. Emelda's body shook with rage. She thinks she's won. But I won't let her. The manager hesitated, then scribbled something on a piece of paper and slid it across the desk. There might still be a backup on the hotel system. But you didn't hear that from me. Daniel grabbed the note and nodded. Thank you. As Emelda and Daniel left the hotel, Emelda's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She hesitated before answering. What do you want now, Mom? Rose's voice was smooth, almost amused. Oh, sweetheart. I just wanted to remind you. I always win. Emelda's grip on the phone tightened. Not this time. Rose chuckled. We'll see about that. The line went dead. Daniel turned to Emelda. What did she say? Emelda looked straight ahead, fire burning in her eyes. That she always wins. Daniel smirked. Then let's make sure this time she doesn't. The night air was thick with tension as Emelda and Daniel sat in his car, staring at the note the hotel manager had slipped them. There might still be a backup on the hotel system. The words echoed in Emelda's mind. This was her only chance to expose the truth. But how could they access it? Daniel tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. There are two ways we can go about this. We can try to get the footage through someone who works in the hotel's IT department, or we can break in and take it ourselves. Emelda swallowed hard. Break in? Are you serious? Daniel smirked. You want proof or not? Emelda sighed. I just want justice. Daniel nodded. Then we need to act fast. Your mother is smart. If she suspects we're trying to retrieve the footage, she'll make sure it disappears for good. Emelda took a deep breath. Then we go in tonight. At 2 a.m., the hotel was quiet. Most of the guests were asleep, and only a few staff members were on duty. Dressed in black, Emelda and Daniel slipped through the back entrance. Daniel had managed to charm a cleaning staff member earlier in the evening, who left a door unlocked for them. They crept down the hallway toward the security office. The sound of Emelda's heartbeat pounded in her ears. Are you sure about this? She whispered. Daniel nodded. I used to work in security. I know how these systems work. We just need to access the backup drive. They reached the security office. Daniel pulled out a small tool set and began picking the lock. Click. The door opened. They slipped inside, closing the door behind them. The room was dark except for the glow of multiple monitors displaying live footage of the hotel. Daniel moved to the main computer. All right, let's see if they really deleted it. He started typing, navigating through the files. Emelda watched anxiously. A few minutes passed. Damn, Daniel muttered. What? They wiped everything from that night. Emelda's stomach dropped. So we have nothing. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Then, his fingers flew across the keyboard. Wait. There's still a backup, but it's locked under an admin account. Can you get in? Daniel smirked. Of course. A few more keystrokes, and suddenly, the screen flickered. A folder popped up. There it is, Daniel whispered. He clicked on the footage from the night before the wedding. The grainy video played on the screen. Emelda's breath caught as she saw it, Richie entering her mother's hotel room late at night. Moments later, Rose appeared at the door, pulling him inside. The timestamp was undeniable. This is it, Emelda whispered. This proves they were together before the wedding. Daniel quickly copied the footage onto a flash drive. Let's go before someone notices we're in here. As they turned to leave, a voice stopped them cold. Going somewhere. Emelda spun around. Standing in the doorway was Richie. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were dark with rage. Daniel instinctively stepped in front of Emelda. "What are you doing here, Richie?" Daniel asked, his voice calm but firm. Richie took a slow step forward. "I could ask you the same thing. But I already know." He smirked. "You're trying to dig up dirt on me and Rose. Too bad you won't get far." Emelda clenched her fists. "We already have proof, Richie. You can't lie your way out of this." Richie let out a low chuckle. "You think that little video will save you? You have no idea what you're up against." Daniel tightened his grip on the flash drive in his pocket. "We're leaving. You're not stopping us." Richie's smirk faded. "Oh, I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to warn you." His eyes flickered to Emelda. "If you release that footage, you won't just be ruining my life. You'll be putting yourself in danger." Emelda's heart pounded. "Are you threatening me?" Richie sighed. "No, sweetheart. I'm giving you a chance. Walk away now, and you can still have a life. But if you go against Rose, she will destroy you. And this time, there will be nothing left of you." Emelda's hands trembled, but she lifted her chin. "I'd rather lose everything than live under my mother's control." Richie's eyes darkened. "Suit yourself." He turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Daniel grabbed Emelda's hand. "We need to get out of here." "No." Back at Daniel's apartment, Emelda stared at the flash drive in her hand. "Are you ready for this?" Daniel asked. Emelda took a deep breath. "Yes." "It's time the world sees the truth." Within the next hour, the footage was uploaded to multiple news sites, social media platforms, and blogs. The headlines spread like wildfire. "Shocking revelation. Bride's mother had an affair with her son-in-law." People were in disbelief. The comments flooded in. "I can't believe this. What kind of mother does this? This is beyond betrayal. Emelda deserves justice. Richie and Rose are disgusting. Cancel them." Emelda felt a small sense of victory. Finally, the truth was out. But then, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Her heart pounded as she picked up. A cold, familiar voice spoke. "You've made a big mistake, Emelda." It was her mother. "You thought you won? This is just the beginning." The line went dead. Emelda shivered. The fight wasn't over yet. The world knew the truth now. Emelda had exposed Richie and her mother's affair, but instead of feeling victorious, a deep sense of unease settled in her chest. The phone call from Rose replayed in her mind. "You thought you won? This is just the beginning." Daniel watched her closely as she set her phone down. "What did she say?" Emelda took a shaky breath. "She's not backing down." Daniel frowned. "We knew she wouldn't. But now the world knows what she did. She's the one who should be afraid." But Emelda knew better. Her mother was a master manipulator. If she wasn't panicking, it meant she had something planned. And Emelda wasn't ready for what came next. The next morning, Emelda's phone buzzed non-stop with notifications. People were reacting to the scandal, but mixed in with the outrage were disturbing new headlines. Emelda's dark past, the truth behind the bride who exposed her mother. Lies, deception, and greed. Did Emelda set this up for money? Anonymous sources claim Emelda has a hidden agenda. Emelda's stomach turned as she read through the articles. False stories were spreading like wildfire. Claims that she had been involved with Richie before the wedding, that she had blackmailed her own mother, and even that she had staged the entire thing for attention. "No, no, this isn't real," she whispered. Daniel grabbed his phone and started searching. These articles all popped up at the same time. Someone planted this story. Emelda clenched her fists. "It's my mother. She's trying to make me look like the villain." Daniel looked up at her, his jaw tight. "Then we hit back harder." Emelda shook her head. "No. Fighting her in the media won't work. She has too much influence. Daniel narrowed his eyes. Then what do we do? Emelda's voice was steady. We find something bigger. Something that will make sure she never recovers from this. Uncovering Rose's secrets. Daniel sat across from Emelda, his laptop open. If we're going to take Rose down, we need to hit her where it hurts. Emelda nodded. Money. Her mother wasn't just powerful, she was wealthy. Her businesses, connections, and influence were what made her untouchable. If they could find something illegal, something corrupt, they could do more than just expose her. They could destroy her. Daniel typed furiously. I'm digging into her financial records. She has too many hidden investments for everything to be clean. After an hour of searching, he suddenly froze. Oh my God! Emelda leaned in. What did you find? Daniel turned the laptop toward her. Rose has been laundering money through fake charity organizations. Millions of dollars have been funneled through ghost accounts. Emelda's breath caught. This wasn't just a scandal. This was a crime. If we expose this, Daniel said, your mother won't just lose her reputation. She'll go to prison. Emelda's hands shook. For years, she had feared her mother. She had always believed that Rose was too powerful, too untouchable. But now, she had the power to end her reign. We have to be smart, Daniel warned. If she realizes we have this, she'll come after us. Emelda exhaled sharply. Then we don't give her the chance. That night, Emelda made her move. She didn't just send the evidence to a journalist. She sent it to law enforcement, financial regulators, and international crime agencies. The information was too big to be ignored. By morning, news channels were flooded with reports. Billionaire Rose under investigation for fraud and money laundering. Authorities seize assets linked to massive financial crime. Emelda's mother faces possible arrests. Emelda's phone rang again. Her mother. She answered, her voice steady. You lose, Mom. Rose's voice was ice-cold. You think this is over? You're finished, Emelda shot back. You can't control me anymore. There was silence. Then, for the first time, Emelda heard something in her mother's voice she had never heard before. Fear. The call ended. Daniel placed a hand on Emelda's shoulder. It's over. Emelda closed her eyes. For the first time in her life, she felt free. Rose was arrested. Her empire collapsed overnight. Richie disappeared, his reputation ruined. As Emelda sat in her new apartment, she took a deep breath. The past was behind her now. Daniel walked in, handing her a cup of coffee. So, what's next? Emelda smiled. I start over. On my own terms. Would you have done what Emelda did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.